Hi, welcome to Dynamic Accounting and Finance Tips. My name is Jolie. Super excited about today's presentation. Today's presentation is about the collections process automation. Now, you can find some YouTube videos out there that will show you how to run the automation in 4 easy steps. It is an easy setup, and absolutely it is 4 easy steps to set it up. But what I want to show you today is your outcome, what you should expect to see and what you will not see when you run these automations. Let's jump in. Okay, so real quick, let me just show you where the automation setup lives. So under your hamburger modules, credit and collections, under setup, you're going to have two options here, collections, process setup, and process automations. These two are connected, which means if you make a change in your setup, you're making a change in your automations. And your automations is really just your batch setup. So we'll come back to these setups in a second. Let's go to your customer credit and collections workspace so I can prove out some numbers. So I'm an accountant by nature. So let's look at some numbers really quick. So right now we're going to say all customers with 180 past the due date. And these are the balances that are due for these customers. Now you'll notice it's $1.45 million. So what we need to do is we need to set up a customer pool that will reflect this same amount. And customer pools are what drives the collections process automations. So that's why I want to bring this up. Now here's our customer pool. It's over 180 days. You can see my pool criteria I've set up ahead of time. Aging periods, amount due balance is greater than 0, and the definition. If I go to preview this customer pool, you can see the $1.45 million. So this is our source data. This is what we're going to use to set up our automations. Now, real quick, before we jump into the setup, let me show you something. So on this very first customer, if you click inside this hyperlink, it's not going to take you to the customer master like you probably would think. It's actually going to take you to the collections page where this is where a collection agent would be working their collections, changing the status, communicating with the customer, making notes on the invoice of and changing the status here is really important for our automations because if the status is promised to pay, the automation will skip the leading oldest invoice. And let me point that out too. This automation and what it can do, if you in case you didn't know, it is set up by Microsoft that it'll automatically identify customer invoices that require an email reminder, collection activity, or a collection letter. So and what it does is it takes the oldest leading invoice. So in this case, because this is a promise to pay broken, the automation would pick up this oldest invoice. It would not pick up this invoice here. Now, in between, let's point out that we have an unapplied payment. The automation will not address those, as well as collection letters. The automation will not address those. So you can see that it's looking at the transaction type and skipping based on the automation configuration. Keep that in mind in a second. Now we're going to talk about pre-dunning in a second as well. Pre-dunning and the way that Microsoft defines pre-dunning, it's an option, so it's a checkbox to create an action for every invoice in one step in a process hierarchy. We'll talk about hierarchies too. Pre-dunning actions are typically an early notice related to outstanding invoices, so a customer can be notified when an invoice is about to become due. In this case, if we select the pre-dunning box, both of these invoices both the customer would get two emails, one for this first invoice and one for this second one. Okay, let's jump into setup. One more thing on the collection status. If this is in a dispute status, the system will not send an email to your customer. But if it is promised to pay broken, it will send a notification to your customer. So that's good. That's all really good configuration. Okay, so let's leave this open. Let's jump into your setup, collection process setup. And we're going to go to new, and we're going to call this 180 overdue. And here's where the pools are really important. So we're saying in this pool ID, now Quiet Days, and it's what it's doing, it's grabbing all the customers and the leading oldest invoices from that pool. Now Quiet Days, this is going to mean if your customer receives an email today for a leading oldest invoice and they pay that invoice today after they get that email notification and that payment post, and tomorrow when the automation runs, the next invoice comes up for an automated email to be sent. It will skip and not send an email to your customer if you put 2 quiet days. It will wait 2 days before it sends another um, notification by email. It's a really good functionality. You have the option to exclude. So typically you do not want any amounts less than 0 to be sent, but that's a business process. I would say for this example, we're going to say don't send anything less than 0. And we'll talk about use prediction at a later time. Process details. So we're just going to select new here. We're going to type in a description. And for this example, I'm going to do an email. Now see how business document populates. It is a template, a system template that we're going to set up right now. So we're going to go to new and we're going to do a 180-day template. Now this is an email system template. So these are just descriptions or identifications. English, very simple. Now this sender name should be someone on your credit team. It's going to populate on the email. And use new email template with the current process details. Yes. So now it replaced the business document here with the new one we just created. So with that template, we need to add a body. So a body of the email that's going to our customer. We also want to set up real quickly some dynamic features. So up here in email template map setup, you can actually add in some dynamic features. So you see I have customer transactions, the amount in the transaction currency, and then this is my dynamic, and I'll show you where that comes into play here in a second. When we configure our body, let's go ahead and do that. So I have a template over here just for time's sake. So I'm saying our records indicate your account is past due. Now I have dearest customer here where I could actually pull in from the global address book the name and do a dynamic feature here and do our records indicate your account is past due 180 days. Uh, let's see. This is the invoice number, so you could add this number is past due in the amount of, and then you can add your transaction currency. So now you're going to get the invoice number, your customer name, and the amount of the invoice in the email automatically to your customer. So you'll see I put this in Outlook. The great thing about Outlook is you can actually save this as an HTML. So let's do that. Just going to do the drop down HTML. I'm going to put this on my desktop and do 180 days. Okay. Now that's going to come in handy. Let's go to new, and this is the body. And the subject line is obviously going to be the subject on your email. So we're going to do past due invoice. Now, you're not going to see this edit button until you hit save. As soon as you hit save, that's a tip. As soon as you hit save, you can see this edit button. On the edit button, you come here to browse, and here you can select your HTML, select upload, and there you have it. Isn't that beautiful? Okay, again, you can make this as long or short or detailed as you'd like. Now we have our setup. Now, one thing I want to point out here, we are saying we want an email notification, and for this example, I'm saying 180 days after the invoice due date. And here, under the customer recipient in this business purpose contact, this is a tip. This should say business. And I want to say out of the box, most of the time it's going to be business, but it's going to default to invoice. It just depends on what you as a business are doing. But I would suggest, or I would think that so I'm going to the customer master here for this customer. I click in this hyperlink, it takes me to the customer master record. Here you can see I have added my email. When I go to advanced, it is set up with a business purpose or purpose of business. And this also was an automated purpose. So typically when you first set up these emails, they're going to automatically go to business. If your company is changing these to invoice every time, then or remit to, then you would need to update this. But I would say for simplicity, just do business. Okay, so you are ready. Now, keep in mind, if you change anything here, it's going to be automatically changed on your automations if they're already set up and running, and vice versa. But let's look at this wonderful feature up here called process simulation. So we can see really quickly what is being sent out. Now, remember, US-001 had 2 invoices in it, but it's only sending out the oldest invoice. Let's go to pre-dunning. If we select pre-dunning and we go back to process simulation, guess what? Both of the invoices are being sent. Just want to show you that tip. Okay, I want to show you something as well. Look at how all of these invoices are either free text invoices, or I'll show you this one in a second. This is a sales order invoice, right? It's an invoice generated from a sales order. But what you don't see here is project invoices. Okay, so now let's keep pre-dunning, and then let's go to set up our actual batch. So go to process automations here, create new, and this would be just for 180 past due. Oh, okay. Schedule time, we're going to schedule this to run pretty quickly. You don't have to do an end date. I'm just going to go ahead and do an end date because we are just testing this. We're doing this every weekday. You can do every weekday. I would recommend every weekday, probably at like 5 in the morning or early in the morning. You can do alerts if you want to be alerted if there's any errors. I highly recommend this. Okay, so then we're going to hit next. And it's going to, again, bring up our setup. Now, I want to change this to say, I want to have 5 quiet days. Okay, so we change that to 5. And then I want to just review everything. Everything looks great. And I go to next. And if I want, you don't have to do anything here, but if I wanted to review, here's all the customers that the process is going to look at for that leading oldest invoice, and it's going to look at the status of the invoice and so forth. We can hit finish. Again, you don't have to do anything here. It's just a way for you to review. Now this is going to run at 7:55, which is 2 minutes away, and then I'm going to show you the results. Okay, so our batch has finished running or processing, and we're going to just look at the history. Now we can see that we have an error. And we could even look at the error, and I can tell you right now it's an error due to my credentials for Outlook, and that's because I'm using the demo environment for Microsoft, which is completely understandable. More than likely, you're going to see this as complete. But I want to point out that we did pre-dunning, so you have both of the emails going out in pre-dunning. And then let's compare this list with the list over here that we agreed we created the pool for, the 1.4 million that we started with. Let's see if we can get these side by side. Okay, so we have 001, and we know what happened there. 003, if we go to 003, there's two invoices. Let's look at that. Okay, there is the sales order invoice, right? Transaction type sales order. And then there's another, oh, this one is a collection letter. Perfect. But it's also only sending the leading oldest invoice, right? So now we have 004s there. Look, 008. Why did 008 not get an automatic email? Let's look. Now, there's a free text invoice. Leading oldest invoice should get an automatic email, but it's in a disputed status. Perfect. We don't want our customer getting anything from a disputed status. But the next leading oldest invoice should have an automatic email. This is where we need to take note that right now, this functionality is not sending any automations for transaction type project. I plan on researching this, so we'll drop another video to find out why this functionality is not working for project, but we can quickly go through here and let's see, 9, 10, 12, 15, 18, 20, 22. Let's look at 23. 23, again, these are project invoices for transaction type project, which should be part of the automation, but for whatever reason, the configuration is not set up for project. And then let's look at 25, which is also missing from our automations. Again, these are all, I can tell by the voucher, project transaction types, which are not part of our automation. And you can quickly see the only thing that is being included are free text invoices and sales order invoices. I will keep you updated. I plan on researching this more in detail, but if you are a company who uses only sales orders and free text invoices, this automation is perfect for you. I hope these tips were beneficial, and I will continue to drop more credit and collections videos because I love this module. There's so much out of the box functionality that I want to present and help for um, businesses. So, as I always end every video, keep growing, keep learning, uh, never stop learning, never stop growing, and always be grateful. Thanks for watching.